101.1. Say that out loud. 101.1. To most people, that means nothing. To an exercise physiologist, it is either the most extraordinary biological discovery of the decade or the most embarrassing measurement error in the history of sports science. And here's what keeps me up at night. We still don't know which one it is. In early January 2026, a Norwegian triathlete posted a picture to his Instagram. No press conference, no peer-reviewed paper, just a phone camera and a lab screenshot. Because that number, 101.1 milliliters of oxygen per kilogram per minute, would make Christian Blummenfelt the greatest aerobic machine ever measured in the history of human physiology. Within hours, some of the most respected exercise scientists on the planet were publicly calling it impossible. One of them manages the physiology of the best cyclist alive. He wasn't polite about it. By the end of this video, you are going to understand something about how the human body works that most doctors never learned in school. And you are going to understand why this specific number says something profound about where human performance actually ends. Hold one question in your mind as we go. What if both sides are right? Before we get to the science, we need to talk about who this man actually is. Because this story only makes sense if you understand that Blummenfelt does not look the part. He is 32 years old, from Bergen, Norway. And he doesn't have the long, lean build you picture when you think of a triathlete. He looks more like a rugby player who wandered onto a marathon course by accident. Stocky, compact, built for impact, not for floating along at 5:30 pace. From the outside, he never looked like someone who was going to rewrite physiology textbooks. And here's the thing most people don't know. He wasn't a prodigy. He spent years as a solid junior, invisible in a sport full of talents. The Norwegian program didn't pick him up because he was obviously special. They picked him up because their system, obsessively data-driven, run by a coach who treats athlete physiology like an engineering problem, found something in his numbers that the naked eye couldn't see. What happened next was Olympic gold, Ironman world champion. And then in June 2022, the Sub-7 project, a controlled attempt to complete a full iron distance race under 7 hours. Swimming, biking, running. 226 kilometers. He crossed the line in 6 hours and 44 minutes. His marathon, after all of that, was 2 hours and 30 minutes. Most amateur runners would be thrilled to run 2:30 on a fresh Tuesday morning. He did it at the end of a 7-hour race. But here is the detail that matters for today's story. His coach has been tracking his physiology for over a decade. And somewhere in his early 30s, something started happening that no textbook predicted. His aerobic capacity was not declining with age like every aging model in sports science says it should. It was going the other way. And that brings us to January 2026, and to 101.1. Let me give you the 30-second science lesson that changes everything. VO2max is the maximum oxygen your body can consume per minute, per kilogram of weight. It is the ceiling of your aerobic engine. 3 things limit it. Your lungs. Can they transfer oxygen into blood fast enough? Your heart. Can it pump enough of that oxygenated blood to your muscles? And your muscles themselves. Can they actually use what arrives? Now, here's the scale that makes January 2026 matter. A sedentary adult sits around 30 to 35, a recreational runner, 50, a professional cyclist, 75 to 85. Eliud Kipchoge, the man who ran a marathon in under 2 hours, is estimated around 90, though his real lab value has never been formally published. Greg LeMond, the only American Tour de France winner, self-reported 92 to 94, though that number has its own messy history. And then there's Oskar Svensson, a Norwegian cyclist, 18 years old. In 2012, he walked into a university lab in Lillehammer and broke every chart they had. 97.5 milliliters per kilogram per minute. Media called him the fittest human ever measured. He won the Junior World Time Trial title that year, And then, shockingly, he quit. Not injury, not failure. He just said he didn't enjoy it enough to keep going. The most extraordinary aerobic engine ever recorded in a human being, and he walked away from it. That record stood for 14 years. Then, in early January 2026, a 32-year-old triathlete posted a screenshot from Bergen, 101.1. But here's what the headline didn't tell you. In that same screenshot, right there in the data, right next to 101.1, there was a second number. A number that should not exist alongside the first one. A number that, the moment exercise physiologists saw it, made them put down their coffee and say, "This is either the most extraordinary thing we have ever seen in a lab, or something went very wrong." That second number is called the respiratory exchange ratio, the RER. And I need you to understand what it means, because it is the key to this entire story. Think of the RER as the body's confession under pressure. When you push yourself to a true physiological maximum, your body stops burning fat almost entirely and switches to carbohydrates, pure, fast-burning fuel. That metabolic panic produces a specific signature. The ratio of carbon dioxide you exhale versus oxygen you inhale crosses above 1.0. Typically 1.1. 1.2 in elite efforts. That crossing point is the body saying, out loud, in data, "I am at my limit. I cannot go higher." It is the receipt. Without it, you did not reach VO2 max. You reached VO2 peak, your best number that day, but not the verified ceiling. Blummenfelt's RER in that test, somewhere between 0.94 and 0.98. Below 1.0. His body, according to that data, was still burning fat at the moment they declared a world record. Which means by every standard textbook definition in exercise physiology, he never technically hit his maximum at all. Let that sit for a second. And this is where the scientific community fractured. Jeroen Swart, performance coordinator for UAE Team Emirates, the team behind Tadej Pogačar, questioned whether the machine in Bergen was even designed to measure oxygen consumption at these flow rates. And he has a point. Commercial gas analysis carts are validated primarily in the range of 1 to 4 liters of oxygen per minute. Blummenfelt's test would require accurate measurement at somewhere between 7.8 and 8 liters per minute, well outside certified range. At that volume, even a 2% error translates to several points of VO2 max, enough to swing a world record in either direction. Jamie Pringle, a British physiologist with deep roots in elite cycling, pushed further. The math does not close. A genuine VO2 max of 101 would predict race outputs beyond what Blummenfelt has actually produced. His best Ironman marathons, 2 hours 38 in St. George, 2 hours 39 in Kona, are exceptional. But they are consistent with a VO2 max in the high 80s to low 90s, not 101. Now here is where the coach enters, and where the story takes its strangest turn yet. Olav Boo does not deny the RER problem. What he says is this: Blummenfelt was tested in his winter phase, carrying 7 to 10 pounds above his race weight. At heavier body weight, the relative VO2 max number, milliliters per kilogram, is automatically lower than at peak leanness. Which means if you correct for race weight, the actual number could be even higher than reported. Internal discussions have floated values approaching 103. Not verified, but not denied either. So let me ask you this directly, and I want you to sit with this for a second before I give you my take. Is Blummenfelt the most extraordinary aerobic athlete ever measured? Or is he the victim, or maybe the beneficiary, of a machine that wasn't built for someone like him? Here's the historical detail I keep coming back to. In 1923, the year after A.V. Hill won the Nobel Prize in Medicine for his work on muscle heat production, he published the first scientific description of VO2 max. Hill and his colleague Lupton ran athletes around a garden track while they carried large canvas gas bags on their backs. They measured the maximum oxygen intake the body could sustain. 100 years later, we are using the exact same idea, progressive exercise to exhaustion, with gas analysis, just with electronics instead of canvas. The framework A.V. Hill built in a garden in 1923 is the same framework now struggling to measure Christian Blummenfelt. And it's worth noting, Blummenfelt is not the first to make the machine uncomfortable. Svensson's 97.5 was never published in a peer-reviewed journal either. It lives in Norwegian lab records and secondary reports. Greg LeMond's legendary 92.5 was recently challenged by a rival who claimed to have a 1988 lab document showing 74.7. That dispute has never been resolved in science. These records, all of them, are only as good as the protocol, the machine, and the day. So here is my verdict. The number 101.1 is probably not Blummenfelt's true VO2max as classical physiology defines it. The RER anomaly is real. The equipment limitation is real. The test likely captured a VO2 peak, not a confirmed ceiling. But here is what I am completely certain of. His integrated physiology, the whole system working together, is unlike almost anything science has documented. A published case study in the Journal of Applied Physiology showed his daily caloric expenditure reaching 8,500 calories during training blocks. He logs up to 1,500 training hours per year. His ability to race at world-class level week after week is in the results, not just in a lab screenshot. The number might be wrong. The athlete is not. And that might be the most important thing this controversy has revealed. We have spent decades obsessing over measuring the engine. Maybe we should have been studying the driver. 5 days from now, Blummenfelt races in Oceanside, California, against Gustav Iden and Kasper Storns, the two Norwegian athletes who train alongside him under the same system. If he wins again, the debate about whether his VO2max is real becomes almost academic. Because as Joyner and Coyle, two of the most cited names in endurance physiology, put it in their landmark review, actual race results integrate everything the lab tries to measure in real conditions with real consequences. The lab can be wrong, the finish line cannot. Next video, I'm going to introduce you to the man behind all of this. Olav Alexander Boo, a coach who burns his athletes' stool samples to understand how their gut metabolizes carbohydrates. Who made his athletes drink $2,000 water infused with oxygen isotopes so he could analyze their metabolic efficiency through their urine. Who has kept meticulous lactate data on Blummenfelt since his early 20s and watched something happen that no aging model in physiology predicted. If you want to understand why Norway keeps producing world champions in endurance sport, that video is for you. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss it. I'm Sebastian. This has been the Injury Breakdown. See you next week.